Welcome to Writer's Life, an ongoing conversation with writers, authors, and folks in the publishing industry. I'm your host, Marvel Harrison, Publishing Director, Mimbres Press of Western New Mexico University. It is a pleasure to share a conversation today with Valerie Plame, a woman of endless talents and courage. From being a former CIA operative to U.S. congressional candidate, Valerie has written a New York Times best-selling memoir, Fair Games, other books. She cares deeply about the state of our country and the world and is founder of Fair Game PAC to help fund candidates, especially women who are concerned about the nuclear threat and climate change. Welcome to Writer's Life, Valerie.
Thank you for having me, Marvel. A delight to be here.
Well, I'm guessing that writing a memoir, which was your first major writing project, might not have been on your to-do list while serving our country as a CIA agent and mothering young twins. How did that first book get launched?
Well, I had resigned from the CIA because, of course, I was rather infamously outed by the Bush administration in 2003. My true CIA identity was betrayed because the Bush administration was really angry that my then husband, Ambassador Joe Wilson, had written an op-ed piece in the New York Times taking to task the Bush White House for their reasons to go to war in Iraq, which was a supposed nuclear threat. And in retaliation, my true CIA identity was betrayed. And that started truly years of just what I think of as Alice in Wonderland sensation, where black is white and white is black, and there was press on the lawn, and it was just a really chaotic, crazy time in my life. So when I finally resigned because I could no longer do the covert job, which I loved, my emphasis, my expertise was on the nuclear proliferation issue, I decided to write a memoir, and it was frankly mostly done very selfishly as a catharsis. I'd been through, my husband and I had both been through so much, as to go from completely anonymous to a very public person in a short amount of time. And living in that environment, it was crazy making, honestly. And I hope to kind of make sense of it all. And I wanted to write it then before I forgot some of the emotions behind it. And so that's what I did. In 2007, I sat down, mostly when it was during the summer when my kids were, little kids, and they were at camp. So I knew I was free from like 9 to 1 every day while they were at summer camp. And I just proceeded to write as though I were telling you, my friend, the story of what happened, and of adding on to that how I joined the CIA, to a certain extent, what I did, and then ended it, of course, moving from Washington, D.C. to New Mexico in 2007.
And Valerie, I think for our listeners, anybody who hasn't either watched the movie Fair Game or read the book, I would urge you to, because it's an important part of our history, recent history, that has impacted our world. And somehow in the insanity of current politics, it's almost like we've washed something that was, less than 20 years ago away. And it probably needs to be held in account for how decisions are made today. So thank you for that memoir, that story. And I guess very personally and selfishly, I am glad you ended up in New Mexico.
Me too.
And you continue to write, but your world has just grown so much beyond that. I mean, you do a lot of speaking. You've set up a very interesting and important conference series. And can you tell us sort of where your world is taking you beyond the writing?
Sure. None of it which I anticipated. And it's all been very interesting, but I do miss my career, my covert career. But after I wrote Fair Game, I wrote 2 spy thrillers, Blowback and Burned. And it really was,
excuse
oh,
me,
there you go. You have it.
happen to have them right here.
It really was meant to be a trilogy, so I'm one behind. I also wrote a lot of op-eds and was very, very engaged, continue to be as I can be in the whole nuclear issue. I was very vocal about when the Trump administration decided unilaterally to exit from the so-called Iran nuclear agreement. We're back in negotiations now. I hope they are successful. I think it keeps us far safer. And the most recent writing I have done, this was kind of fun. I was approached by a former colleague in the CIA. He has gone out to some other former CIA officers as well. And we are all writing a chapter in a spy thriller. It's called Naked Came the Spy. I just finished chapter 12. You have to take what's come before and tweak it a little bit. So, which is just a fun exercise. I managed to not do too much over the pandemic, honestly. I had just finished a run for Congress, which ended up with me not going to Washington, which is actually just fine, although I wanted to serve my country again. And honestly, for most of the pandemic, I just kind of exhaled. So this is, it felt, I was a little scared and anxious around sitting down and writing again, even though it wasn't a very big project, but it just felt like, oh, how do I do this again? And it's really rusty, but you get the creative juices going. And at the end, it was just fun.
Well, then I'm thinking about how different that would be, because it's not exactly your story. A memoir in that cathartic, really raw sense is so powerful. So how do you start a writing project that you're chapter 12? I mean, I'm already well into this book, and then,
it's probably about halfway through. I felt at that point, the book really needed direction. It all starts with an enormous bomb blast at the Savoy Hotel in London, killing the head of MI6, the head of the CIA. And then it's sort of a whodunit. So I've tried to, there are many, many possibilities, and I've tried to narrow it. And I threw in even a little, I don't want to say a sex scene, but it was a little something, a little action between 2 of the main characters, because I felt we needed that. And so like I said, I just had fun.
I think that's terrific. I'm glad to hear about that. And what's the working title of this now?
Naked Came the Spy.
That's the title. And is there already a publisher for it?
I think there is. The fella who is editing it all and handing out assignments, he has done other, anthology isn't really the right word, but whatever the heck this is, things like this, these sort of projects before. So he's got that under control. And unhappily not at Mimbres Press, but maybe my next one.
Well, I think it's terrific that you've put your toe back into the writing world. And I think it's wonderful, too, that you still have that voice within the CIA world. It's such an important way that we can intervene in the world as a nation. And I think the more people can be engaged with it, even via the written word and a novel, is really.
I'm a strong supporter of intelligence, our service. The people that I worked with were some of the best I ever had the good fortune to come across, people with real integrity, so smart. And so you had mentioned a conference that I put together called Lies and Nukes. And we had our second running earlier this year in Tucson. And the whole idea behind it is to both educate and entertain the general public, because it is fascinating. Of course, we hear every day incidents where national security is so important, whether it's the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or how much we understand now they interfered in the 2016 election, the rising power of China, and they have just been stealing us blind. What happened in Afghanistan. So these are all incidents that people might think are far away, but they in fact affect us here in the United States very deeply, whether it from our democracy or how terribly divided we are as a nation. So I put this conference together to try to help the general public understand as well as entertain, because the most fascinating stories are ones that are told by the real people who live this life.
Right. And I just the other day had a call from a friend who, without even knowing about that, said she had had two colleagues who had attended the conference and had had such a great experience.
Oh, good.
And I think that that type of work, you're writing about it, is a way for people who might just have a difficult time taking in the news and really understanding how things operate. It becomes a user-friendly, attainable way for the world to have information.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's not partisan in nature. We deal with reality. And so yeah, I'm very proud of the speaker lineup I have. These are real heroes, amazing people that are the real deal. So it just every year it keeps getting a little better and bigger.
Well, congratulations on that too.
Thanks.
And in the meantime, what other kinds of things are tickling your brain around topics that might delve into?
Well, a project I'm working on, and I hope comes to pass, is putting together a podcast. In a way, I was inspired by the conference, Lies and Nukes, because I love to have conversations with people and find out what makes them tick, what motivates them. And I would, of course, reach out to my former network of CIA operatives and other people in that intelligence space. I don't see it as a wonkish sort of conversation. I'm really more interested in the human stories. So hopefully that's coming together in the near future.
Look, one more avenue. I mean, audio is the road of the future, I think.
Oh, no kidding. I mean, who did not get turned on to podcasts during the pandemic, right? And a lot of it has stayed. People want it in bite-sized pieces. I know I do. When I go to the gym, I'm working out, I want a 45-minute, really interesting conversation.
And I think that you'd be a brilliant host in terms of you have such a great way of engaging with people and are so, easy to have a conversation with that.
Oh, thanks.
I can only understand that from that. You know what I think it is I think it is your authenticity, and that you bring that to the table, but along with a lot of savvy and smarts and history.
I can say I'm genuinely interested in people. Everyone has a story. You just have to ask. And that's the fun part.
Wow.
If you ask the right questions with sincerity, people hear that and they know that. And I'm not judging anyone. Well, some people I do judge, but not everyone.
You see, there it is, right there, how appealing you are. And I think people want to be in on conversations. And that's how I feel like when I'm listening to a podcast, it's like, oh, right. And
I didn't know that. I mean, I'm sure my husband is sick and tired of me. When I come back every day, I have like a new factoid that I heard from a podcast today. Did you know? Can you believe this? But isn't that what learning should be? You're constantly absorbing and marinating it, hopefully.
Right. And a final question before we wrap this up is, do you have any authors or particular books that you sort of generally recommend to folks?
Are we talking fiction or nonfiction?
All of the above.
Gosh, I tend to take me to a real life bookstore, and I tend to always go to nonfiction, politics, history, memoir. That is my comfort zone. Occasionally I wander out into fiction. But a place I love, a niche I love, I think it's called narrative nonfiction. And it would be someone like Eric Larson, who is a master of telling stories that become true stories that are just page turners. He did The Devil in White City, in The Garden of the Beast, about being in Hitler's Germany as he's coming to power. And he takes a true little known story, and the way he's able to braid the threads together and make a whole cloth out of it is masterful. So I mean, that comes to mind, but I'm a voracious reader. At any given time, I'm reading 4 or 5 books.
Okay, well, and you seem to be able to keep them straight somewhere, somehow, along with all those podcasts. But it's been a joy to speak with you today, Valerie, and thanks to everyone who's joined us. I'm Marvel Harrison, and from all of us at Mimbres Press, may your day be sparked with curiosity and wonder. See you again on the next Writer's Life.